while Keir Starmer sits in Downing Street, trying to project calm and authority, one woman is determined to make that as difficult as possible. Her name is Isabel Oakeshott. She is a journalist, political commentator, and Telegraph contributor, and she has made it her mission to hold Keir Starmer publicly accountable. Not in a polished, carefully hedged, media-trained way, but in a sharp, specific, no-nonsense style that consistently gets under number 10's skin. Right now, she's running one of the most relentless on-air campaigns against a sitting prime minister that British television has seen in years. The revelations she shares, the secrets she exposes, the warning she repeats, all of it plays out live on camera in front of millions. And Keir Starmer has no way to stop her.
Well, we already know that Keir Starmer thinks that international law is more important than not only our broader national interest, but also our national security. Because if he didn't think that, then he would not be so obsessed with remaining in the ECHR, and he would come out of the ECHR and he would stop the boats. But nonetheless, he thinks that international law, as he sees it, and there are interpretations of international law that absolutely do allow us to stop boats. But nonetheless, he's such a purist in these matters that he puts that up against the national interest of this ongoing invasion of people who we have no idea who they are. But what we categorically do know is that a significant number of them have demonstrably posed a grave danger and threat to the people.
Now, before we get into all of it, you need to understand who Isabel Oakeshott actually is. This is not just any commentator reading from a teleprompter. Oakeshott is the journalist who co-authored a book with former Health Secretary Matt Hancock during the pandemic, and then, in a move that sent shockwaves through the political establishment, handed his private WhatsApp messages to the press because she believed the public had a right to know. Hancock called it a betrayal. Oakeshott called it public interest. From that moment, anyone paying attention knew she was not the kind of person who sits on a story. That is the woman now turning her full attention to Keir Starmer. And she said she has uncovered things that are going to matter a great deal. The biggest, the one she keeps returning to, the one she calls a scandal in waiting, begins with a name: Lord Wahed Ali.
Been around Westminster for over, I'm sorry to say, it's about 20 years. And, during that time, got to know very, very well how MPs live and how they operate. And it is not true that they are showered in gifts or even offered modest things. And those with the integrity, who have their main focus on their constituents. In this case, Starmer's constituents are, by the way, the entire nation. That's the job he signed up to do. Do not blindly accept hospitality worth thousands or even hundreds of pounds, and they certainly don't accept clothes. And are they to be offered these things? The sensible ones will immediately think two things. First of all, what does this person bearing gifts want from me?
Yep.
And secondly, however tempting these little luxuries might seem, how is that going to backfire on me?
So, who is Lord Ali? And why does this keep coming up? Lord Wahed Ali is one of the most influential Labour donors in Britain. He is a life peer, a media mogul, and a long-standing major financial backer of the Labour Party. When Starmer became Prime Minister in July 2024, details of his relationship with Lord Ali started emerging. And those details were something else. Over £100,000 worth of gifts and hospitality, thousands of pounds in designer clothing for his wife, expensive glasses, Taylor Swift tickets, Coldplay tickets. Every new disclosure made things worse for a man whose political identity had been built on the promise of a new era of integrity in British public life. But here is the detail Oakeshott has locked onto and never let go of. During the COVID lockdown, Starmer filmed a political message that appeared to come from his own home. It was not his home. It was Lord Ali's flat. He filmed a political video from a wealthy donor's apartment and presented it as his own personal space. Oakeshott called that a lie, not a mistake, not an oversight, but a deliberate decision to mislead. She said on air that single detail was possibly the most damaging aspect of the entire Lord Ali story. Not the clothes, not the concert tickets, the lie.
It's really very bad for all MPs when a colleague, and in this case, the most senior politician in the land, behaves in this way, because it fuels an impression amongst voters that politicians are all at it. And they aren't all at it. It isn't true that they're all at it, but you can forgive voters for thinking that when those at the very top who should be setting an example are making off like thieves with every freebie that they can get their hands on. I mean, one, Taylor Swift hospitality is great good fortune. Two, is frankly downright greedy.
And here is why Oakeshott insists the Lord Alley story is far from finished. Her argument is that there are deeper questions about this relationship that the press has never pressed hard enough. What access did Lord Alley have to the Prime Minister? What conversations took place? What was understood between them, even if nothing was ever formally written down? She says the question of what Lord Ali actually received in return has never been properly answered. She calls it a scandal in waiting, a story sitting just below the surface, waiting for the moment it fully breaks. She says it will keep coming back, dominating headlines and resurfacing until Starmer stops being evasive and gives the country a full, honest account of exactly what that relationship involved. Given her Hancock track record, nobody in Westminster is dismissing her instincts. But while the Lord Ali Fred simmers, there is another front Oakeshott has been hammering with equal energy. And to survive this warning, Starmer probably finds even more humiliating because it is about pure, cold polling numbers. When Labour won the 2024 general election, they did not just win, they demolished the opposition. Nearly 400 seats, one of the largest parliamentary majorities in modern British history. Every tool a government could want, the mandate of the country behind them. And yet, within months of taking office, Labour is trailing consistently in national polls behind Reform UK, not marginally, but month after month. Oakeshott has been pointing this out at every opportunity with barely concealed disbelief.
Quite extraordinary that's happened. I don't think anyone anymore doubts that the era of Labour and the Conservatives just passing power back and forth between them, with all other parties acting like little piggy in the middle, unable to ever catch the ball. I don't think anyone is now saying that that is going to continue. Reform, as things look at the moment, has fundamentally changed the UK political landscape, I believe, in a lasting way.
She says Starmer is panicking because the mood inside Labour headquarters is bleak. She keeps asking the same basic question: how does a government win a landslide and still manage to lose the country within 2 years? She calls it a complete structural failure of political judgment. And if you want to understand why, she says, just follow the spending, because she has been going through the receipts one by one. What she has found is genuinely remarkable. Let us start with the Albanian deportation flights. You would think a government serious about demonstrating immigration enforcement would find a cost-effective removal arrangement, a charter, a shared service, something proportionate. But what actually happened was taxpayer money funding private jet travel for Albanian deportees. When this came out, Oakeshott was absolutely furious. She called it outrageous. A government telling the public there is a gaping hole in the national finances somehow found the budget for private aircraft to carry deportees across Europe.
Complete and utter joke. These numbers are completely derisory relative to the scale of the problem. And this is Starmer massively on the back foot. His party is currently literally behind Reform in the polls, despite his enormous majority in the House of Commons. He's panicking, and they've rustled up this pathetic stunt. Well, taxpayers are not going to be deceived by this, are they? Taxpayers are entitled to be absolutely bloody furious that once again their intelligence is being insulted and their hard-earned cash is being squandered arranging exclusive private jet travel for Albanians who, let's be frank,
have broken the law. They've broken the law,
and what are they getting? 4 seats each or something on the private jet. What an absolute joke, and what a disgrace this government.
Alongside the private jet story came 2 more revelations Oakeshott seized on immediately. British taxpayer money was being directed toward Albanian prisons, funding a foreign country's prison infrastructure, and separately, Funds were being spent on electric police vehicles as part of a green policing initiative. Oakeshott's point is not that any single one of these is indefensible in isolation. Her point is about what the combination says about priorities. She lines all three up side by side and asks, who exactly is running this government? Private jets for deportees, money for Albanian prisons, electric police cars, all while ordinary citizens are told the public finances cannot stretch to things they actually need. She says it is not just a communication problem, it is a values problem. And then came the furniture. Not long after moving into Downing Street, Starmer's team spent £28,643, replacing the chairs Rishi Sunak had left behind, nearly £29,000 on furniture at the exact moment the Chancellor was telling pensioners their winter fuel payments were being cut because the country could not afford them.
This is extraordinary from the government. They've dug in all this time and again. They've come under pressure on this issue over recent weeks. Time and again, dug in. They insisted that they had to press ahead with the cancellation of these elections because they were ever so inconvenient. The councils weren't ready. And knowing that they faced a showdown in the courts this week, they have caved. And I'm stunned by it, actually.
Oakeshott's response to the furniture story produced possibly the single most memorable line of her entire Starmer commentary. She looked straight at the camera and said, if you cannot get a good deal on home furniture, what hope have you got running the country? And honestly, what can you say to that? A prime minister who raised taxes in his first budget, who cut winter fuel payments, who told the country there was a black hole in the finances, and then spent nearly £30,000 on chairs. The optics are almost comically bad, but the furniture, the jets, and the Albanian prisons are all symptoms of a much bigger problem Oakeshott has been diagnosing for a long time. And the problem is this: Starmer does not appear to have any fixed political beliefs at all. On issue after issue, he has taken a clear public position and then reversed it entirely when the political wind changed direction. Let us start with Brexit. For years, Starmer was one of the loudest voices for a second referendum on leaving the EU. He architected Labour's People's Vote policy, pushed for European alignment, and championed it publicly. Then, when he became Prime Minister, it simply vanished. He ruled out rejoining the single market, ruled out the customs union, and declared Brexit settled. The man who built years of political capital challenging Brexit just erased that version of himself and presented a new one without ever properly accounting for the change. Then there is gender self-identification. During his leadership campaign, Starmer backed simplified processes for changing legal gender and made statements suggesting trans women should be treated as women across public spaces. Facing pressure, he reversed that too, revised, clarified, and nuanced his position until the original statements were almost unrecognizable.
So I think that Nigel Farage was right when he said just now that speech will come back to haunt Starmer, because he just isn't going to achieve it. He won't leave the ECHR. He won't put a target on it. His measures are feeble, to say the least. And this is going to continue being an absolutely simmering source of political frustration and fury among the British people.
Oakeshott's argument is simple, and she repeats it constantly. You cannot take what Starmer says today as a reliable guide to what he will do tomorrow. His positions are not convictions, they are placeholders, adjustable, and open to revision whenever the political situation demands it. The left feels betrayed by the Brexit climb down. The right does not believe a single word he says on immigration. And the center, watching him flip-flop, is concluding there is no real substance beneath the carefully managed surface at all. This brings Oakeshott to the personal narrative, the backstory that Starmer always reaches for when under pressure. You have heard it by now. Starmer, son of a toolmaker, grew up in a family that had to fight for what it had. A man of the people. Someone who knows what ordinary life looks like. It is a powerful story, built to make you see him as someone who did not arrive at Westminster via privilege. Oakeshott has a specific, persistent problem with every word of it. Not because it is entirely fabricated, but because she argues it is strategically misleading. Starmer grew up in Surrey, comfortably middle-class Surrey, one of the most affluent counties in England. Yes, his father worked as a toolmaker, but the family was not in poverty. From that stable foundation, Starmer went to Leeds University, then Oxford. He became a prominent human rights barrister, was appointed Director of Public Prosecutions, and was knighted. That is not the story of someone who clawed their way up from hardship. That is someone who had a solid foundation and built a very successful career on top of it.
There have long been rumours about Keir Starmer's private life, and they certainly aren't to do with any kind of doubts over his sexuality, if I can put it delicately. Okay. They are to do with his past and what the shape of his family really looks like. And it wouldn't be fair to go any further than that. But this is an open secret at Westminster that those question marks have been around for a long time. And papers have been extraordinarily restrained in not publishing any of that speculation. And even whether they've got, maybe there are publications that have more information than I'm aware of. They've been restrained. Why?
Oakeshott says the working class backstory is being used as political armor, a way of preempting criticism by positioning Starmer as too grounded to be questioned. She says he has been carefully constructing a public image that does not match private reality. And for a man whose entire pitch to the country was that he represented a clean break from spin and deception, she argues that contradiction sits at the heart of everything he does, which brings us to immigration, not just the jets. The bigger structural plan, Oakeshott says, worries her far more than anything else this government has announced. The Starmer government has been advancing a visa-reliance strategy rather than pursuing dramatic cuts to immigration. The plan creates structured visa pathways for specific labor market needs. The government presents this as sensible, modern, evidence-based migration management. Oakeshott calls it naive at best and reckless at worst. Her argument is rooted in recent history. Every time a British government created a new visa route and promised it would be tightly managed, the numbers went up. Enforcement capacity was lacking. Courts were backlogged. The Home Office was overwhelmed. She has zero confidence the current government has the infrastructure to manage another complex visa program effectively. She warns it could open the doors to a whole other wave of immigration. And by the time the consequences become undeniable, it will be far too late to close them. She makes this argument knowing exactly what is at stake politically. Every time Starmer looks weak on immigration, Nigel Farage picks up ground. She says Starmer is handing Farage his best campaign material free of charge, week after week, seemingly without realizing it.
To understand what the British people want, I believe, the vast majority of them, is for all illegal asylum seekers to be returned. That's anyone who crosses the channel in a dinghy should be returned. Now, whether that is that the boats are stopped, they're turned back safely, and they're, whatever measures need to be taken to ensure that nobody drowns, because we wouldn't want that, get them all back to France safely. That's one option. Or the alternative is to bring them over and immediately detain them and then prepare for deportation. Yeah. That's what needs to be done in each and every case. And if we were consistent about it, we'd soon find that the market dried up, because who's going to pay thousands of dollars or pounds just for that traumatic experience? It's no deterrent.
But if you think Oakeshott reserves her sharpest commentary for the Prime Minister alone, you have not been paying close enough attention, because she has things to say about Labour's entire front bench, and she spares no one. Let us start with Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor of the Exchequer. Delivering a budget is one of the highest pressure moments in any politician's career live in Parliament, on television, watched by millions. And when Reeves delivered hers, Oakeshott was watching her verdict. She said Reeves sounded like she was filling out a tax return live on stage, not building a vision, not making a case for the country's economic future, just reading numbers in a flat mechanical tone that somehow drained the energy from one of the most consequential political moments of the year. She called it graceless, she called it embarrassing. For someone regularly described as a future Labour leader, Oakeshott said the performance was a very long way from impressive.
A bit like that as Prime Minister, we might not be in the truly woeful place that we're in. all the way through this budget, Rachel, and by the way, can we talk about the fact that she felt the need to point out that she was the first woman ever to have delivered?
Yeah, for a very long time, about half an hour. Yeah, all right, Rachel, you're a woman. We've got it. Move on.
Yeah, I suppose from a bunch of people who struggle to know what a woman is, maybe this was a development. But I just thought that was really self-indulgent. I mean, look, we all know she's the first female chancellor. Brilliant, genuinely. I think that's great. But it's so kind of self-indulgent. It's vainglorious, isn't it, to go twanging on about that? Well, that was a poor start. It was graceless and a bit embarrassing.
Then there is Angela Rayner. This is where Oakshott's take becomes genuinely interesting because her view is not entirely negative. She has acknowledged that Rayner has something most of her Labour colleagues simply do not: fire. Real, undeniable fire. When Rayner speaks about something she genuinely believes in, you feel it. She is not reciting prepared lines. She has an authenticity that cuts through in a way almost nobody else on that front bench can match. But Oakeshott's problem is not with Rayner herself. It is with the Labour Party's handling of her. The party, she says, seems genuinely frightened of her. They manage her, contain her, stay nervous about what she might say if left to operate freely. Oakeshott calls that an extraordinary waste of genuine political talent. A party with an authentic, instinctive voice in its leadership chooses to spend its time trying to suppress it. With Rayner having since stepped back from the front bench entirely, Oakeshott's question hangs without a good answer. Was this a party that never knew how to use one of its most compelling voices? And then there is Wes Streeting, the health secretary. Oakeshott's line on him is priceless. She says he looks like he is still polishing his LinkedIn profile just in case politics does not work out. Her point is that he is more focused on personal positioning than actual governing, every decision filtered through the lens of how it builds his profile, a future leadership run, a media career, a book deal. She says that when you see someone operating like that inside the NHS brief, you start to understand why the NHS is in the state it is in. What we have is a coherent and deeply damaging portrait of a prime minister who has, on almost every front, failed to live up to what he promised. A leader who accepted over £100,000 in gifts from a single donor and filmed a political video from that donor's flat while presenting it as his own home. A Lord Ali relationship that Oakeshott insists is nowhere near fully told. A government with a record majority trailing in polls to a party that was not in power before them. A chancellor who cannot deliver a budget without putting the nation to sleep. A deputy prime minister with real fire, which the party spent its time containing rather than deploying. A health secretary keeping one eye permanently on the exit. Private jets for deportees. Money for Albanian prisons, new chairs in Downing Street, while pensioners face hardship, reversals on Brexit, reversals on gender self-identification, a comfortable Surrey upbringing dressed up as a working-class origin story, and an immigration plan Oakeshott is convinced will open doors the government will not be able to close. Oakeshott has been saying all of this loudly, consistently, and without apology. The polls have moved in the direction she predicted. The chaos inside Downing Street has played out almost exactly as she described, and she is nowhere close to being finished. The scandal in waiting is still waiting, and she fully intends to be there when it finally breaks. Whether Starmer manages to turn things around or not, one thing is certain. As long as Isabel Oakeshott has a television screen to speak from, he is never going to get a quiet moment.